Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women to Women, everything hormone, adrenal, trauma, and weight loss. So I'm excited to kind of launch these podcasts, primarily because I'm really trying to get as much information out there as I possibly can, and also have you all see the connections between weight loss and the gut, weight loss and adrenals, weight loss and hormones. And they're all connected. And it also, when we are not looking at the right categories, it can cause you to have difficulty losing weight. So today I have somebody on board, Dr. that I've known for a long time, and it's Dr. Vincent Pedre. And let me tell you a little about him. He's got a lot of credentials that really are very exciting because he really can help us understand the connection between the gut microbiome and weight. He's a medical director of Pedre Integrative Health and founder of Dr. Pedre Wellness, CEO, founder of Happy Gut Life LLC. And here's the thing that's interesting. He's worked as a nutraceutical consultant and spokesperson for Nature MD and is a functional medicine certified practitioner with a concierge practice in New York City. And he's had that practice since 2004. So he's done a lot of work on guts. He believes the gut is the gateway to excellent wellness. His newest book, the GutSMART Protocol, featuring a 14-day personalized gut healing plan based on the GutSMART quiz. And it's really a accumulation of years of research and clinical experience as a functional gut health expert. So I'm really delighted to have him on board. And we'll really dig into a little bit more about how it's all connected and what are some of the essential things that you can learn from this, as well as pick his brain about his next book that is coming out as well. So thank you so much for being with me today. I am excited actually to talk a little bit more about the gut microbiome and especially this concept of metabolism that you have something new to say about. So what inspired you to write another book? I mean, why you got one, why another? Why?
I feel like I learned a lot from the first book, and I learned a lot about what people need and what they want. And my second book was really partly fulfilling what I think, you can only learn by having written one book. And I'm not going to say made mistakes, because my first book is great and it's got a lot of really valuable information. But the truth is, the science is evolving so quickly with the microbiome. Plus, I've got another 7+ years of experience since I wrote my first book, that I felt, I think a lot of authors in the health space, they move from one topic to the next. They'll write about hormones, then they'll write about something else, intermittent fasting. And what feels good to me is like staying in my lane, but diving as deep as I can into that lane. And I feel like what I did with this book is create a program that is way more refined than my first book. And it's better written because one, I've just have more time and more experience, but also the editor that I had with this book was just incredible. And the way we just edited and polished the information in this book to make it as readable and accessible to anyone who's, I think the book speaks to, it's like a Disney movie. It speaks to doctors, to people who know science, but it also speaks to the layperson, and it doesn't lose anyone in between. And that was partly my goal. My other goal was realizing that, most gut books out there are one size fits all. And the truth is, when it comes to gut health, there is no one size fits all for everyone. There's a lot of individuality. So I undertook a pretty audacious task, I will say, which was to create a quiz. In that quiz, divide people into 3 categories: mild, moderate, or severe gut types. And based on that GutSMART quiz, then devise 3 different meal plans, recipes, so that people know what to eat depending on how severe their gut issues are, to guide them on their healing path. And I also wanted to incorporate a lot about the mind-body connection and the vagus nerve and the role of meditation and breath work in not just healing the gut, but also healing the entire body. So I think of this as like an evolution past my first book into like, we just get better as doctors, right? As time goes on. And I think this book just captures all of the wisdom that has evolved since then, and in a way that it doesn't, both of my books, I think you would, anybody listening would still get a lot of value from Happy Gut. But if I were to say, where does this book relate to Happy Gut, I think this is actually the prequel to Happy Gut. So I went backwards, and this is the dream book that I would have written had I been able to say, like, this is the book I want to write from the very beginning, but I didn't know how. But this book is the dream book that I wanted when I wrote my first book. It's got color, food photography. It was an excellent collaboration. The people who came together, between the chef, who's a best-selling author in Australia, who's a dear friend, to the food photographer and the food stylist and the graphic designer. This book just came to, it was so easy to put together, even though I'm going to say easy in quotation marks, because there's nothing easy about putting a book together, but everything was in flow for this book. And it had a lot of hands on it. And I think anybody who reads it is going to see that this book takes you by the hand and walks you through the entire process, teaches you, gives you the understanding, and then takes you through the program in a way that it feels like you're there with your best friend.
Awesome. So let's dig a little deeper into the gut microbiome. I mean, I think everybody knows now that the gut is a big deal. And when I first started practice more years ago than I choose to say, we talked a lot about, using probiotics, and everybody was saying, probiotics, especially the gastroenterologist. Are you kidding me? We don't need those. What are they? I think they called us the granola docs on the hill when we went to Grand Rounds. But what we started to understand now is that the gut is really the seed of our health overall. I mean, if we have poor gut health, we have more immune issues, we have more autoimmune issues, we have more emotional issues. I mean, it's like ignostium, kind of looking at things. We also know
it's a domino effect. It's the top domino that then causes all of the other health dominoes to tip over.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the gut microbiome from your perspective, kind of starting to ending. And I love the fact that you have a book that people can actually utilize and actually get better, because so many people have gut issues. Certainly 80% of my patients had gut issues. So let's talk a little bit about it and help the audience really understand the gut microbiome a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's important to understand that there are many microbiomes in and on the body, including in all the orifices, the mouth, the teeth, the nasal passages, inside the vaginal canal, inside the stomach and the intestines. But when we talk about, why we talk so much about the gut microbiome is because it is the biggest reservoir of the microbiome in the body. So 75% of the microbiomes that live in the body are actually inside the large intestine, estimating at 100 trillion bacteria. Now, to put that into perspective, I like to give this statistic that there are 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So there are multiples of that inside our gut. We have many galaxies inside our gut in the number of microbes, anywhere between 500,000 species. And their role in our health is actually something that we're gaining more and more understanding about, but we certainly don't completely understand yet, because for most of the history of medicine, we've either been looking at the body from the outside, or we've been looking at the body from the inside, but just looking at the organs. We've never put on the microbiome glasses and looked at our bodies through the perspective of the microbiome, and how is it affecting all of the different systems in our body, the hormones, brain, skin, airway, immune system, metabolism, energy, all those things are being affected by the microbiome. And it's almost like anything in science, and I think in functional medicine, one thing that I like to tell people is just because the test doesn't show it doesn't mean it's not there. It's just could mean that the wrong test was done, that they didn't look the right way, that there's other things that could be looked at. And you're not going to find the answers if you don't know what questions to ask. And it's really in the last 20 years where we really started to ask that question of what is going on in the gut? How does the gut relate to the rest of our health and wellness? How does the gut lining, gut permeability, the gut microbiome, all those things affect everything, including our mental health?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just did a podcast last week with someone, and we talked about endometriosis and the gut microbiome. And we know there's a huge association. If we can clear up the gut, it also then helps clear up the uterine, lining, and then also decreases cramps. It decreases kind of endometrial discomfort as well. So we're really starting to kind of connect the dots, which is amazing, because before that we didn't, especially with something like endometriosis.
Even with bone loss, there are very direct connections with building strong bones and osteoporosis and the makeup of the gut microbiome and the way that calcium is absorbed into the body. So I think, and cancer, even colon cancer, it's actually Colon Cancer Awareness Month this month, March. And I was really fascinated. You started by talking about probiotics, and I found a study that was looking at using a probiotic in a rat model where they induce colon cancer. And they found, so they did a study where they induced colon cancer. One group was control, so they just got a placebo. The other group got a very high dose probiotic, I think over 100 billion or maybe 200 billion. And the group that was given the probiotic did not develop the changes that would turn into cancer. So it was protective, whereas the other group did. So there is something going on in there with our microbiome that's regulating a lot of aspects of our health, like you said, like even endometriosis, menstrual cramping, pain, all related to the gut and the gut microbiome.
So let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, metabolism. Everybody that comes in, certainly to my practice, often would say, I think it's my thyroid. My metabolism is just off. I hit menopause, and no matter what I do, nothing's working, and I can't lose weight, and I'm exercising more like crazy, and I'm eating really cleanly. Help me, help me. So let's talk a little bit about that connection that you talked about with metabolism and the gut microbiome.
Yeah, I mean, I find that people, we oversimplify things, right? So everybody, when they hear the word metabolism, especially women, are going to think thyroid. Right, You're thinking, well, the thyroid is the master gland of the metabolism. But the truth is, how many thyroid patients do you have on thyroid medication, are perfectly balanced on their thyroid hormone, and yet can't lose weight? They still have trouble.
Totally.
So it's not just the thyroid, it's the neglected piece of metabolism, which is our mitochondria, which are the energy factories inside every single cell in our bodies. And interestingly, if you look at historically where mitochondria may have come from and why they're inside of our cells, they think that they were bacteria at one point that became symbiotic and were absorbed into these eukaryotic cells, which are like mammalian cells. And they developed this relationship where the cell, the bacteria is like, well, you provide energy for me, or you provide the nutrients that I need, the antioxidants, things like that, the proteins, and I'm going to provide energy to power the entire body. Well, when we're talking about metabolism, we're mostly talking about mitochondria, I think, and not really so much thyroid. Thyroid is kind of the set point, but it's really the mitochondria, and they're super, super temperamental and sensitive to a lot of things that can particularly get in through the gut, especially if there is dysbiosis, if there's an imbalance and overgrowth of yeast producing mycotoxins. The mycotoxins are going to disrupt the ability of the mitochondria to work. If there's dysbiosis, if there's been exposure to antibiotics, that's also going to disrupt mitochondrial function. Having leaky gut, where you're not absorbing nutrients properly, so you can't get the right nutrients to your mitochondria, is also going to affect your metabolism and energy. And a lot of people, as they get older, they're just not making enough stomach acid, so they're not able to break down their proteins into their component amino acids that are needed to build the proteins that become the enzymes that power every single intracellular action, including what's happening inside the mitochondria. So it becomes this, again, like we talk about this domino effect of how the gut is kind of almost like at the center. It's at the seat of our health, and it's controlling all of these downstream things. And so if someone is struggling with a weight loss issue and they think, well, it's my metabolism, things aren't breaking, really, you have to look at the gut. What's happening with the gut? What's happening with detoxification? And I think of detoxification as the triad of detoxification, because everybody normally thinks, well, I need to detox my liver. Well, that's only one part of it. The other part is your gut, like pooping on a regular basis, really important for detoxification. If you're not pooping at least once daily, then you're not going enough. And it's got to be complete bowel movements, not just little pebbles. And third, we need to start thinking about the microbiome as not just this conjunction of microorganisms, but actually like an accessory organ in our body that is producing a whole bunch of signaling molecules, including short chain fatty acids, anti-inflammatory molecules that help regulate things like our weight, our insulin sensitivity, our ability to process sugar, how much inflammation is in the body. So it's more complex, but anybody who thinks they have a metabolism issue, what they probably have is a gut issue and a detoxification issue.
So connecting the dots in regards to that, I think a lot of people would, when they hear you say that, it's like, oh, come on, it can't be true. But we also know that so many people out there are struggling with, they're doing everything right, and they're not connecting the dots, because a lot of the conventional docs, thank God we have them, but a lot of the conventional docs are not connecting the dots, and they're not even acknowledging some of the stool testing that we do. So help us kind of understand and navigate that, because I think people are so frustrated with that notion, and it's not they're right and we're wrong. It's just that I think that we practice a little differently. We're looking for the cause of the cause of the cause. Yeah. And also want you to kind of talk a little bit about this notion of fecal transplants, because there is science now to show that if you use a rat model and you have a fat rat and you then transpose the fecus or the fecal pieces to the other rat, what happens is it gets thinner, or mouse too. So
I love this study. Yeah, I love this study that I actually created a call out in my book about, I called it "Making Thin Mice Fat, Then Thin Again." Yep. And they did a study where they took mice. The way that we study this to understand, well, let's take all the factors away so that we can understand what is the role of the microbiome, if any. So we use germ-free mice that have no gut microbiome. And then they found what they call discordant twins. So one twin was thin and one twin obese, that related to each other. And they took the poop from the thin twins and they put it in the cage with the thin mice, and they fed and they basically, so they took the poop from the thin twin, they took the poop from the obese twin, they put it in different cages with different mice. Mice, I think dogs do this also, they eat poop. So they just, nice. It's just the way that they function. Maybe they know something that we don't know about fecal transplants and stuff. So they fed them the same diet. So again, making sure to cover all factors to make sure everything else is the same. So what we understand is that the poop from the thin twin colonized the gut of the germ-free mouse that was thin, and the poop from the obese twin colonized the gut of the thin germ-free mouse. And they were both fed a low-fat diet, high in plant polysaccharides, so fruits, veggies. So kind of what you would consider a healthy diet, low in saturated fat. And the thin mouse that got the obese fecal matter got fat, gained weight, developed metabolic syndrome. The other mouse stayed thin. So then they thought, well, okay, this is really interesting because this is the first time that, wait a second, is obesity a trait that can be transferred through the stool, which means that it's a trait that's being expressed and held by the gut microbiome. What happens if we now take the thin mice that stayed thin and the thin mice that now are obese, and now let's cohabitate them and put them in the same cage? Well, turns out they eat each other's poop. And what they found was really interesting. The thin mouse's gut resisted colonization with the bacteria from the obese mouse. But the obese mouse, their gut got colonized with bacteria from the thin mouse, and fed a low-fat diet, lost weight. So the mice that had gotten fat actually lost weight. And then they decided, well, what happens if we take those mice, they just lost weight, their gut microbiome has shifted. What if we now put them on a high-fat diet and start feeding them, not a good, like a diet that would make you gain weight? Well, guess what happened? They gained weight again. So what does this tell us? One, it tells us the gut microbiome is playing some sort of role in weight management. There's some level of imprinting that happens, right? So it's not just the microbiome. The microbiome is being regulated by the foods that you eat. The foods that you eat then basically will support certain types of microbes in the gut and will not support others. So if you're eating a diet high in refined carbohydrates and a lot of inflammatory oils, that's going to favor a certain type of microbiome that's different from if you're eating a diet really high in plants and soluble and insoluble fibers and lots of polyphenols and fruits, veggies. That's going to favor a different type of microbiome. And so we haven't exactly translated this into humans yet. So we haven't figured out, like, what we do know, which is really interesting. This was a case study where a mother-daughter, the mother had C. diff colitis. So it's an infection that happens in the colon that you can get from having been exposed to antibiotics. And it can be really dangerous. I mean, you can get a really large colon, the colon can perforate, and she wasn't responding to antibiotics. This infection out in the community and even in the hospital has become very antibiotic resistant. So it is one of the few things where our FDA actually has authorized fecal transplant as a way to treat, because the fecal transplant is 90-some% curative of this. I think it's over 95% curative. So the daughter became the fecal donor for the mom to help cure her C. diff. But the daughter had PCOS, which means she had insulin resistance, and she was overweight. The mother was not. So mother did not have any prediabetes. She didn't have any metabolic syndrome. But guess what happened after she received the donated? She developed metabolic syndrome. She started gaining weight. So I think with that, we realized, okay, we need to actually screen people. If we're going to allow them to be a fecal donor, it's not just like they're donating their fecal matter and that's okay. No, they're actually potentially transferring chronic disease traits to the person who's receiving that stool. And I know you can't do it in this country, but if you go to other countries like England, the Bahamas, you can go to clinics where they do fecal transplants, and they have a very strict screening procedure to screen whoever it is that they're getting the stool from, who are the fecal donors. And I know that there's also another company that works out of Canada that is doing fecal pills for autistic children. Mm-hmm. And they can actually have some really amazing measurable results. Right. But again, it's part of the science that is evolving. We know for sure in adults that fecal transplants can be really helpful in people who have Crohn's disease, so inflammatory colitis of the gut, ulcerative colitis. Not as clear if someone has autoimmune disease, if they have other systemic diseases, or if they have obesity, whether that's going to shift things.
Well, it's pretty exciting because it's kind of the nuance of things that all of us in functional medicine have suspected, but we didn't know for sure. And, it's going to be really a matter of, what happens in the next 5 years in regards to this, because it's just now bursting everywhere, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah.
So tell us, when is your book coming out? When's the lucky day that we can kind of get a copy of the book, and how do they get it?
Well, the book is available for pre-order already. If you go to GutSMARTprotocol.com, and you can, any listener can download a free chapter there from the book. It's my gift for people to just get an idea of what the book is about. And I think if they actually get an idea of what the book is about, I think they're just going to want to buy the book. And if they go in pre-order, they can get a whole bunch of bonuses right now that are total over $100. The book will be on sale officially on April 4th. It's called the GutSMART Protocol. I don't think we mentioned the name yet. It's called the GutSMART Protocol. And what's really unique about it is that it's a personalized gut healing program that is based on a quiz that I devised that divides people into mild, moderate, or severe gut dysfunction. And based on that, I created food lists, I created meal plans, recipes, and it's kind of like make your own story type of book where you figure out what is right for you. And I think that really sets it apart from any other gut book out there, and makes it really easy to follow and helps people become more intuitive about their healing. Because I'm sure you feel this way, that part of the work that we do is we're body whispers, and we're helping people understand what their bodies are speaking to them. And by doing that, we're teaching people how to listen to their own bodies, because ultimately we want the patient to be their own doctor. We want to teach them how to manage themselves, how to deal with the day-to-day fluctuations that happen. And it all comes down to really listening and knowing your body, and understanding how food affects your body and what are the right foods to eat under different circumstances.
Absolutely. Well, together with my weight loss program, people will be amazing, because they'll have amazing weight loss, because my people generally lose about 20 pounds in 6 weeks with the homeopathic drops that I use. And then also I use genetic profile to keep the weight off, so they know what to eat. So if we combine these programs, we'll have gut healthy, thinner people, which would be awesome. So
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. Well, thank you so much for doing this today. And I'm so excited that this book's coming out. It's desperately needed. I mean, a lot of people have gut issues, and now they'll know what to do.
Thank you.
Be their own doctor. Thank you so much. Awesome.